have some breaking news coming in just right now. Iranian media has reacted strongly to the U.S. strikes. An Iranian state TV commentator said every American citizen or military in the region is now a legitimate target. A news anchor said on Iranian state television, and I'm quoting here, "Mr. Trump, you started it and we will end it." Now, the broadcast showed a large graphic of American bases in West Asia with the headline, "Within the fire range of Iran." The anchor said the U.S. had no legitimate place in the region. Now, we have just breaking news just coming in. We have some Iranian media reacting to this, and we have our correspondent Susan just joining in. Susan, now we were just talking about these targets that Iran has time to time said that they will be targeting these if U.S. get involved. What is the latest that you can bring in?
So we were talking about Iran's capabilities, and I failed to mention another very important thing. All of those individuals that make decisions in situations like these have been killed by Israel. Iran's top commanders have all been eliminated by Israel. And then the second important thing is that air defense, where it seems that Israel has complete control of Iranian skies. The third that could really do harm, we know Iran has proxies, but Hezbollah. And Hezbollah has essentially been almost eliminated. I mean, completely not able to defend Iran even during these 9 days. So we're hearing these news coming out of Tehran, but we're also hearing from some regional Iranian officials who are saying that, a war has started, that some of our nuclear facilities have been, to a certain extent, damaged, but they're claiming that Fordo hasn't. So it has had damage, but it's not completely gone. This disconnect between what Iran is saying and what it's capable of doing in terms of retaliation really needs to be examined. And again, once we know what the damage assessment is, then, and I think once Iranians know themselves as well, they're in a sense of shock right now. Once they know, then I think they'll have a better picture of if they have the capability to retaliate and to what extent they can retaliate.
All right, Susan, of course, we'll be getting to that also. And also to discuss more, we are now being joined by Bishop Garrison. He is a former senior advisor to the Secretary of Defense and current senior fellow at the George Mason University Law School. He's joining us live from Virginia. Thank you so much for joining us. This is breaking news just coming in. U.S. has now been involved in this Israel-Iran war. Your first reactions to these military strikes?
Well, thank you for having me. First and foremost, what comes next? I want to understand and know, and I think the American people deserve to know what conversations the White House and the administration had with Congress, with U.S. Congress before this took place. There was no declaration of war against Iran, so there must have been some type of imminent threat to take this type of action, this level of action against that sovereign nation. So the president needs to say that in his statement tonight and really make out a clear case as to why this may have taken place. The United States has been in the region at war for the past 20 years. I myself am a veteran of Operation Iraqi Freedom. So again, the American people have already had a strong disdain for this type of military action. So it needs to be a clear indication as to why at this moment, at this time, the president and the administration felt it was necessary. There was a clear, imminent threat to the United States and its interests for them to take on this type of action.
Absolutely, and we were discussing with our correspondent Susan that what kind of reactions we can expect from Iran, and there's some points that she put in that we really don't know at this point of time what kind of reaction we get from Iran, because so far we haven't seen, we don't know what kind of capabilities they have. So far they have just warned, and now we have some Iranian media saying that now every American citizen and military target is a legitimate target. What is your reaction to that?
Yeah, we should not be surprised by that type of statement. For Americans in the region, this is an potentially active war. And Americans and our allies, our partners that are in the region need to understand that they're going to be potentially targeted. Our bases will potentially be targeted. And there should be some major concerns here. Again, we need to understand what comes next. What is the potential follow-on plans for this? And are we clear that we really did reduce, minimize, or even remove or the Iranian nuclear capability, potential capability at this point? Again, the United States intelligence community was stipulating that they did not have the ability to build any type of nuclear weapon, nor were they going to build one. So again, we need to understand why the administration was willing and able to take this type of risk on, given the second and third tier ramifications of what it ultimately means.
Absolutely, and also we also looking at what kind of escalation we're looking at regional. U.S. We heard from our correspondent New York there has been some kind of high alert messages for diplomats, and there's also been Israel's been on high alert. What kind of escalation are we expecting from Iran as of now?
Right. To your point, we still fully don't know because we don't have a full and clear understanding of the overall capabilities right now. And another part of this is this administration has been making, the Trump administration has been making very strong moves to reduce a lot of our overall government footprint. To include the State Department. So individuals that normally would be involved in any type of diplomatic processes, any type of review of nuclear policies, of any type of follow-on discussions that would be designed to help alleviate and relieve tensions. We don't have the same type of structured workforce that we did before. So this is going to be a very complex piece moving on, and we really need to hear tonight, the world needs to hear from the president and from this administration what plans they have in place or are ready to put in place in order to ensure that this doesn't go any further than it already has.
And also we've heard Trump in his statement said that now is the time for peace, and we've heard some sources say that he really wants to go for a diplomatic solution now. What kind of reaction do you think from Iran? We know that Iranian media has said that they're going to attack, but we really don't have any official statement as of now. But is there any possibility of a diplomatic solution at this stage?
We don't know. There's always, I would say, there's never a zero chance. There's always a possibility of some level of diplomacy, even in these moments. But you would argue, one would believe that it would be much less likely to actually take place, given that now in their mind have been attacked by both Israeli forces and now by their American allies. So, of course, as I've stated on this network recently, within just a couple of days, we all want peace. The nations of the world, citizens across the country, to include Americans, really wanted peace in this situation, and to see this action taking place, it seems like we've definitely gone in a very different direction right now. And Iran has stipulated in the past that they were not going to simply surrender and take a knee. They were going to continue to fight through this, and I imagine that's still the case as of right now.
All right, I'll go to our correspondent, Susan. And now we have some news coming in that, and it's also true that Iran had been anticipating these attacks for several nights now. The advisor to the Speaker of the Islamic Consultative Assembly have just said that they were expecting, and nothing exceptional had happened. Of course, these are the reactions that we're getting it from the Iranian side, but also we know that you just talked to us about how there has been some kind of alerts in New York. What kind of reactions are we getting in from the U.S. now, Susan, if you can just bring in?
He is on high alert. We just a few minutes ago, we got a message saying that they're on high alert around places of worship, government buildings, and also different diplomatic buildings as well. The concern also for the United States is that Kash Patel recently said this, the FBI director, that there may be sleeper cells across the United States. So, that's something that concerns Americans as well, on whether or not if there is any kind of retaliation, it would, be on American soil in any way. But again, these are just all predictions, their anticipations, as our guest just mentioned, until we have a proper assessment of the damage, and until we find out what really happened. It's hard to really gauge what the Iranians are planning on doing. But I will say, from what the advisor to the Speaker of the Islamic Consultative Assembly, Mehdi Mohammadi, is saying, he's saying from Iran's perspective, nothing exceptional had happened, as you mentioned. He continues by saying Iran had been anticipating an attack on the Fordow site for several nights. The site had been evacuated for some time ago. If an attack had occurred, no irreparable damage has been recorded. And so, one has to wonder, this is in direct contrast to what President Trump is saying. He's saying Fordow is gone. We're getting reports that some 6 bunker buster bombs were targeted and hit Fordow. And on the other hand, we're hearing the Iranians saying no significant damage has been recorded. Now, whether or not the Iranians are saying this to try to recuperate, and maybe they're in a sense of shock, they want to understand what's exactly happening, whether or not U.S. operations were not successful or as successful as President Trump is saying, again, that's anyone's guess. We'll get a better understanding once President Trump addresses the nation at 10 p.m. The American people are concerned right now. They want to know what happened. Was there a clear, present, imminent danger against the United States that the United States decided to get involved or not? But again, these are all questions that first need to be answered, and that I think that way we can gauge sort of how Iran would plan to retaliate and whether or not it has the capabilities and capacity to retaliate to the extent that that perhaps would be measured if Fordow, Natanz, and Esfahan are completely gone.
Absolutely. Susan, I'll come back to you. I'd like to go to our guest, Bishop Gersten, again. Now, this seems like when U.S. is involved, it seems like this escalation is not just confined to Israel and Iran. It seems like now it's a regional conflict. What kind of risk does this now, does it play for the region as of now, the stability in the region?
Well, it just adds to the already ongoing instability within the region, and the U.S. has several bases and military units, throughout the area. When you talk about a military member still in Iraq, so this is going to definitely cause some levels of complication moving forward until we get a better understanding of what Iran's overall capabilities are and what the plan is from here from the president. As your colleague mentioned, Iran already had somewhat of a heads up when the president said that he was going to decide his next moves within 2 weeks. Now, granted, he took much less time than that when you're looking at 3 to 4 days, but it at least let Iran know that they needed to move their materials, and it seems as though potentially they did. Now, we're going to get some levels of propaganda right now. You're going to see some of the early fog of war here as they're trying to push through whatever narratives they think will best suit both their policies and their overall operation. So, of course, they're going to say, we weren't damaged that bad. We still have the capabilities to do X, Y, and Z. But there's going to be some level of truth in this, just given the overall timeline and the heads up, so to speak, that the nation had in order for them to be able to respond to what might be coming next.
Absolutely. And as you mentioned, diplomatically, we have some countries who have been an ally of Iran, including Russia. And that being said, Russia also have had their, they helped in building one of these nuclear sites in Iran. How do you think, this will impact, not just Arab countries, but also involving these countries such as Russia?
Yeah, well, we've already been having ongoing issues with Vladimir Putin just from his operations in Ukraine. So it's going to make him first much less likely to be able to work with the United States in bringing that conflict to any type of resolution, if he was ever actually going to do that or be willing and able to do it. So that's part one. Part two is that you're going to see potentially some of our adversaries who feel either threatened by this activity or feel a need to save face, again, as you're talking about Russia. It's going to make for interesting activity moving forward about how China views this type of action, given that the U.S. was stepping in to support Israeli forces or Israeli operations with this regard. There's always been tensions with us and what might happen if China decided to move on Taiwan or deeper into any other regions. And given a lot of their influences in other parts of the world, this is going to have some ramifications for our adversaries and then for our allies too. Like who knew what? What did our allies know about this potential activity? Did we give a heads up to any of the European nations, for UK, Germany, and France that had been working diligently to try to negotiate with Iran and bring this conflict to some type of resolution peacefully? So a lot needs to be said here, and a lot more needs to come out for us to have a better understanding of where we are now and where we could potentially be headed to.
Absolutely, and it seems like it's a very dangerous situation, you could say, and with getting U.S. involved in this whole escalation. Of course, as you mentioned, Germany, UK, and France have been working into this whole diplomatic, situation and trying to get on the table. U.S. on the other hand, had said that now is the time for peace. He's still expecting Iran to come on the table. Do you think these strikes could somehow, we just saw Iranian media say this, but could that actually, in some way, bring Iran to the table and sort out some kind of ceasefire?
It could. Again, we just don't know at this stage what Iran is willing to do and what it's actually capable of doing long term. Now, another part of this too is that it's not just simply about Iran at this point. It may be other nations or other individuals either that are sympathetic to Iran in the overall situation that now see themselves as needing to be activated and brought forth into this fight. And as, again, your colleague mentioned with Director Patel mentioning the potential of any type of domestic activities or domestic threats, that comes into play when you have these types of siloed cells or even individuals long said or called the lone wolf actor. But really, they see parts of various ideologies that they respond to and that may motivate them to bring out these type of attacks. And this type of activity against Iran from the United States could really motivate a variety of responses from individuals who are not directly connected to the Iranian regime.
All right. I'll come to our correspondent, Susan. Again, we're still getting reactions from the Democrats. We have one top Democrat in the House of Representatives who said that a U.S. attack on Iran risks American entanglement in the war. Clearly, we have seen some kind of, would say rebellion against, Trump, that we should not go for this and not involve U.S. Into this. What other reactions have you been gathering? All right, okay. We seems to have some kind of audio issue with Susan.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, Susan, we can.
I apologize.
Absolutely. If you can hear me now. Now we have some reactions from the Democrats coming in where they're not happy with Trump's actions. They said that now it risks every American citizen. How are the Americans reacting to this whole escalation?
So the latest poll that we saw basically and that came out, and this was about 9 days ago, and then maybe shortly after, just at the beginning of when Israel started to strike Iran, and then, President Trump talking about the possibility of the United States getting involved, the majority of Americans do not have an appetite for the United States to get involved in this war in any way. The questions are different between Republicans and Democrats on whether or not it could be like a one-off thing or not, whether the U.S. would get involved in that sense. But in terms of boots on the ground or prolonged war, there is absolutely no appetite for that. But what's interesting is you look at other polls, and almost 80% of Americans agree that Iran should not have a nuclear weapon, and it's a direct threat to America's national security. But then again, we see these conversations not only happening among Americans, and then a lot of it has been happening online, but also in Congress between Democrats and Republicans as well, that everyone agrees Iran shouldn't have a nuclear weapons, but how to reach that goal is the question, and usually where the debate comes. And the concerns for many Democrats on Capitol Hill is that, will this action, did he basically bypass constitutional law, undermine checks and balances? Could this spiral into a broader war? Many Republicans are concerned about this as well. Possible contamination. What about IAEA backlash? And ultimately, would it weaken multilateral efforts and U.S. global standing? I mean, these are some of the concerns that we've been hearing from lawmakers, again, mostly Democrat, but Republicans as well. We saw Republican Thomas Massie come out and say what President Trump did was unconstitutional. But then you have Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, in direct support of President Trump. And I think these conversations that we're seeing happen on Capitol Hill, well, the similar conversations are also happening between the American public as well. But I, again, cannot really stress strong enough, Americans really don't have an appetite for war and for the United States to get bogged down in another forever war.
All right, Susan, thank you so much for joining and giving us the latest. And of course, thank you so much, Mr. Bishop Garrison, for joining us and giving your insights on this whole escalation. It's yet to see what kind of reaction we get from Iran, but as escalations do burn up, of course, we're going to have to see in what comes next. But thank you so much for joining on the broadcast and giving your insights.
Thank you for having me.